Mr Acting President. I rise to speak on this bill, and particularly the part that retains to the windfall gains tax. This is generally a policy my party has supported for a long time. Sustainable Australia Party policy on this subject is, and I quote, capture for the public the land value gains, brackets unearned profits, from planning and rezoning, rather than gifting them to private sector developers. This would include introducing an ACT-style 75% developer betterment tax in all states on the total land value gain between current zoning use and the new approved use received from favourable land zoning. The tax would be applicable only at the time of a new planning approval. This tax reflects the value that the fact that the value of the new property rights allowing higher value development is created by the community through the political process. End quote. Now, while the bill before this House is not identical to that, and it's not as high a tax rate as that, in essence it captures the spirit of my party's policy. Private sector developers have long been gifted the gains made in the land value due to government land rezoning decisions for far too long. And my congratulations to the Andrews government, who after 7 years in power are now introducing the type of policy which our party has advocated for many years. There have been some hefty windfall gains made by developers during the term of this government, so this bill is better late than never, and I welcome it. So congratulations to the government there. There are other good policies on my party's website, and some may wish to have a look at them. Many are framed like this one to ensure a fairer society when it comes to housing and planning. Some of them relate to banning political donations from property developers, which, as has been tested in this House, not supported by the major parties. The government has been slow to act on the issue of so-called windfall gains or value capture or value uplift, but it has now, and congratulations. However, the timing does seem to suggest that it may be to capture the windfall gains generated by the biggest developer bonanza that will be gifted around the suburban rail loop. And it's a pity that when it came to the rezoning of Fisherman's Bend some years ago, the very definition of a windfall gain, the previous government did not take such value capture principles into account at that time. I often hear politicians on the right accuse the left of wanting to hand out free stuff, but the Fisherman's Bend rezoning story proves that handing out of free stuff is not only the preserve of the left. Mr President, recently ABC News published an article on its website by Daniel Ziffer which explains why such taxes as this windfall gains tax on land rezoning is necessary. The story was called, and I quote, the story is called "Taxes that Reward Asset Owners and Punish Wage Earners, Leading Society into Crisis, Say Experts," end quote. The story began with the following quote: "House prices and the value of the share market have ballooned, but wages are barely growing. The combination means a widening gap between those who make their money from assets and those who make it from their labour." The story quoted Dr. Angela Jackson of Equity Economics, who provided an historical perspective on the current situation of widening wealth inequality in our society. A wealth inequality which threatens social cohesion, and we've seen through this pandemic increasing instances of the breakdown of social cohesion here in Melbourne. Dr. Jackson pointed out that from the 1970s, taxes on wealth have diminished, and we've seen an increasing tax burden fall on those who make their income by working. Dr. Jackson pointed to Prime Minister John Howard's reduction in capital gains tax, which tilted the playing field even further in favour of people who make income from assets and against people who earn money from work. That is another reason why I'm speaking in favour of the windfall gains tax the government is proposing. And I thank the Greens for raising the issue, but you know, property in Australia, in Melbourne, in Victoria, has become an avenue for speculation. And speculation development has gone wild, and there are great profits to be made, much bigger than the share market. But it's a Ponzi scheme, and it's backed up by government concessions, like what I was talking about, reduction in capital gains tax and other concessions for profits made in property, and it's also backed up by industry's demands for more and more population growth to provide customers for this property. So everyone says invest in property, but we really should be investing in smart manufacturing. That's what we should be investing in. Property investment is non-productive. But if a landowner has a huge uplift in the value of their land as a result of these government actions, then it's only right that the increased value should be taxed for the benefit of society as a whole. After all, it is the society that pays the price with loss of amenity, environmental damage and impositions on infrastructure. I also believe a windfall gains tax lessens the likelihood of developers bribing politicians, a real worry of mine, as the gains to be made from rezoning land are reduced. At the same time, a contribution to the services all society needs is derived from these government rezoning decisions. The ABC story I referred to also quoted a Mr Rob Pallin, who is the well-off chair of retailer Paddy Pallin, who also believes the current tax system unfairly benefits asset owners over wage earners. Australia used to consider ourselves a very fair and equitable nation, that's what he says. But I think we're losing that gradually, and I think we've got to move our way back towards it, end quote. That is why I will be voting in support of this bill, because this bill is a move towards the fairer and more equitable society that Mr Pallin was talking about. I grew up in such a society. I've seen it change for the worse over recent decades, and it's time for wide-ranging reforms, which this bill makes some contribution towards achieving. I commend the bill. Thank you. Thanks, Mr President.